We'll just find a breath that's supportive. A little bit more intuitive breath than the box breath we utilized last week. Just an easy, fluid exchange of inhale and exhale. As you're finding your way into the respiration, think about those tweaks and adjustments that you can make in your spine so that your seat is more easy. Seeking out that weightlessness in the seated posture. Weightlessness in that your spinal column is stacked in a way in which gravity is doing the work of positioning you. Gravity is holding you, and you're just allowed able to just be. And we'll give ourselves just about 30 more seconds here. And as it feels appropriate, let's exhale, drop the chin down to the sternum, and turn the palms up towards the ceiling. So chin is tucked, palms are up, shoulder blades are retracted back, maybe like 10 to 15%. So a little scapular retraction. And then just like move the top of your head, like you're arcing the top of the head across the full range of movement. This is going to give us access to the musculature that ties in at the base of the cervical spine. So thinking about arcing the crown of the head through full range, and thinking about how you're elongating that transverse musculature between the torso and the neck, kind of connecting the torso and the head. And we'll just move through this full range, maybe pausing in areas where you're feeling expansiveness. Checking in on your hand placement and your scapula placement. Both of those positions are really going to impact how much of this musculature we can connect with. So there's this very wealthy royal who's hosting a big to-do dinner party. Maybe one more time through both directions of full arc. Really playing with the expansiveness, maybe even getting into those lateral cervical spine musculature expansions. And then eventually bringing our head back to neutral. And here we're going to look for that weightlessness in our seat again, particularly trying to find ease in the cervical spine. Now we've kind of moved and mobilized all that musculature. What can we do to stack the cervical spine so that we don't have to hold here. This might require or might be improved by just a slight retraction of the jaw. And then if you can find that ease, or when you find your version of ease here in this seat, let's bring our hands together at heart center. And we're going to take our elbows out towards shoulder height. And then with an exhale, we're just going to bring the elbows together. Inhale, elbows back to shoulder height. Exhale together. And we'll just move like this a few times. Here you can start to play with that scapula retraction once again. The more we retract the scapula, the more of that stabilization musculature around the shoulder capsule, around the humeral heads, we're going to be able to capture. Trying to mobilize the shoulder joint, the shoulder girdle. Maybe one more full cycle through this movement. And then we'll relax. Palms up. Chin neutral, gaze neutral, scapula active, maybe awareness around the shoulder girdle is a better way to describe what we want there. And then think about lifting the torso. Like the seat is anchored, and we're just going to try to bring lightness into the torso, the crown of the head, kind of drawing towards the ceiling or sky. And just feel some space in this anterior belly region. Think about how the musculature around the lower half of the torso is expanding as you breathe. And then turn your right palm down and let your left hand reach behind you. And let's press with that right hand and turn towards the left shoulder. Think about elevating the torso, still crown of the head reaching upwards. And then releasing back. Left hand goes down, right hand behind us. We'll turn towards that right shoulder, gazing behind us. We'll come back to neutral. Let's extend our legs out in front of us for a little staff. And from staff, just find a forward fold. And from your forward fold, remember that you can soften into the knee bend. Just think about what you can do to get the body to relax slightly more. How you can offer just a little more relaxation into your folded shape. And so this royal who's hosting this dinner party, she's invited all the who's who. And all the well-to-do. And that has created a little bit of anxiety within her. She wants this event to be memorable and exquisite. And by all means, as perfect as it can be. We're going to give ourselves just about 50 more seconds here in this fold. She has a fairly extensive staff. And they're all quite talented. And yet there is something that's coming that is outside of everyone's control, and that is a major storm. She's been watching the clouds all day as this wall of weather rolls closer and closer to her royal palace. When it feels appropriate, let's bring our way back up into staff. Think about that hip hinge, bend both knees, and let's let the hands come on the shins or the ankles or the kind of below the kneecaps, and take your feet out roughly mat width. Doesn't need to be mat width. If that doesn't feel right for your hips, just modify and adjust to the place that feels best for you. And then let the hands kind of wrap around the lower leg bones so that we get a little bit of engagement in the hands. And with an inhale, think about sending the center of your sternum straight forward, lifting the chin. And then with an exhale, think about the middle of your back falling back and kind of hanging off the legs here. Chin tucks. Inhale, we'll draw forward, we'll lift the chin. Sternum forward, chin forward, scapula back. And reverse. Into that exhale, middle of the back rounds, chin tucks. Scapula kind of come forward naturally as the arms hang, right? Inhale, we'll draw forward. With just a little modified spinal articulation, cat-cow, extension, flexion, articulation. Maybe you can feel into the shoulder capsules a little bit more deeply after that shoulder capsule movement. Maybe one more time in each direction. No rush to make it true, but when you are complete with that cat-cow articulation, let's extend our legs one more time. And we're going to go into one more seated forward fold. See if you can find a little bit more space in this fold. A little bit more ease in this fold, a little bit more fluidity in your breath in this fold. So it's early afternoon when the storm arrives. And it's a much more extreme weather event than anyone had anticipated. The winds are not only howling, they are ripping, and that they are physically ripping the clay roof tiles off of the roof. And after the onslaught of wind comes a deluge of rain. And to the horror of this royal host of this evening's dinner party, areas where the tile has been ripped off the roof start to leak. And she starts frantically running around and putting little pots out, collect the water. We'll give ourselves just 60 more seconds here. And those big releasing exhale breaths and trying to find just a little bit more space in your fold. And then when it feels appropriate for you, we can bring ourselves up into a staff once again. Have your blankets handy. And let's set them up. So we'll just set both of them up from a shelf fold to a half fold. So you end up with kind of a blanket or towel approximation, roughly this shape. And that will be for both. And we'll just have those to the side. And then we are going to head onto our backs. Just landing here so that your spine can be at ease. When your body feels like it is adapted to the neutral support beneath it, let's heel to our feet together so that the thighs, inner legs can be as close together as is comfortable. And then with an exhale, we're going to allow the left leg to just fall out open into a little half butterfly. And with an inhale, we'll bring the left knee back to mirror the right. And then we'll do that to the second side. So exhale, right leg falls open. And inhale back to neutral. And we're just going to work on these alternating half butterflies, syncing our movement with our breath. As the open side of the body begins to move, there's a tendency for the opposite side of the sacrum to lift up. So for instance, as your right leg starts to fall open, the left sacrum, the left outer edge, lateral edge of the sacrum really wants to lift up. See if you can really consciously anchor the sacrum down as the legs fall to their half butterfly shape, so that you are opening from a sense of grounded stability at the sacrum. It will almost assuredly require concentration and effort to make that true. Let's see if you can bring that into the alternating external hip rotations. As the abductors get more and more fatigued, you may notice both kind of a little bit of catchiness, spottiness in the fluidity of the opening and closing, as well as a more desire within your body for that sacrum to lift as you fall into your external rotation space. We're actually targeting fatigue of the abductor musculature here today. So don't think of that fatigue as problematic. If it starts to show up, think of it as allowing us access to deeper external hip rotation as we move along in practice. Let's do two more to each side, or two more till you are feeling balanced. And when you do feel complete, we're going to allow the bottoms of both feet to come together and both knees to fall out wide. Robata Sukhasana, supine butterfly. Opening into that external hip rotation. We're not going to be here in a static position for a super, super long time. Try to relax into the release here. Next time that you draw an inhale breath, let's bring our knees back to neutral. And keep the inner feet as close together as is comfortable so that we have the bottoms of the feet anchored and planted, but that medial edge of both feet is touching or as close together, as close to touching as we can comfortably. And then let's start without allowing the bottoms of the feet to break their connection with the mat, to start to add some dynamic butterfly. So this again, when you get to that end range or the limited end range based upon your ankle flexibility, the ball of the foot at the big toe on both sides, so that inner edge, medial edge, is going to want to peel up. Really think about anchoring that down so that the toe mound is providing the stability that our sacrum was providing earlier. And as long as that toe mound is anchored, you can go as open as is possible here. We work back into this abductor fatigue potentially manifesting. You may notice the catchiness, the hitchiness in your movements. Not atypical. I would say if you're not experiencing it now, it's likely that you're going to experience some catchiness in your movement before we're done with today's practice. And so this woman is running around and she's putting copper pots everywhere and she's catching as much of the dripping water as is possible, and she's pointing out to her staff where things need to be cleaned up, and she's calling to her maintenance staff and asking them to make repairs. And they've run up and they've assessed the roof and they've explained to her that the clay tiles are gone, they've been blown off, they've shattered on the ground. There's no way they're going to be able to fix this tonight. And she's, the anxiety of what she was doing prior to this crisis emerging was already there. So she's kind of going into a little bit of a tizzy here. But she sits down with the head of the maintenance staff and she asks if there's anything that could be done that would at least get them through the night so that they could host this giant event without the embarrassment of the leaking roof. And he starts offering some suggestions, but he also explains to her that, these are temporary. And by their nature, being temporary, it does not mean that they will be foolproof. He starts talking about, little plastic patches and trying to catch leaks above the ceiling. And she says, do whatever, anything you can. And so the maintenance crew goes to full work. Every last resource is called in and they start doing everything they can to stop the leaks. And one by one, these leaks start to go away. All the while, the kitchen staff is coming in and they're asking her questions about the food, and she's being very short and snippy and not remarkably thoughtful about her answers. But she's providing them quickly so that they can get out of her way and she can get back to working with the maintenance crew fixing these roof leaks. The next time that you exhale, the knees go wide, let the bottoms of the feet come together and let the knees fall all the way out into your traditional supine butterfly here. Just note how the external hip rotation feels. Note how the abductor musculature feels. Note how the lumbar is arching. If you can get the sacrum and the lumbar to be more neutral. And this will be pretty short here. We'll be here for about 30 more seconds. All right. So this bit of movement likely to cause more fatigue. So just kind of expect that. We're gonna reverse what we did with the knees were pointed up. So this time the bottoms of the feet are gonna stay together. We're gonna anchor, so add maybe like 10 to 15% more pressure at the toe mounds and heels. And then we're gonna lift the knees as high as we can lift them without the bottoms of the feet breaking any contact. So they stay as firmly connected as is possible. And then we exhale back up. Good is lift to as high as is possible without the bottoms of the feet breaking their connection, and then releasing back open. Again, the hitchiness, catchiness, kind of stutteriness of the movement is, if not expected, exceedingly likely. Also, at this point, it is possible that the abductor musculature is fatigued enough that your external rotation is a little bit hypermobilized. And so just be aware of that possibility for hypermobilization at your full external rotation. And really try to stay consciously aware of how the hip hinges are operating. If that hyper mobility is advantageous for you, you can go to a full opening. If hypermobility doesn't feel advantageous to you, maybe pause before you get to your full range possibility. There is the potential for some heat buildup in this medial musculature, in that abductor musculature. Again, tremors and shaky movement is not unexpected if you're experiencing it. We're going to give ourselves about 45 more seconds here. When it feels appropriate for you, we're going to bring our knees back to neutral and let your body sit for a moment. Let the hip girdle sit for a moment. Think about how different the hip girdle is. You may even still feel some like contractions and vibrations through that abductor musculature. About 20 more seconds just to allow everything to relax. And then we are going to just add a little dynamic sway. So as you exhale, let both knees fall to the left. Inhale to neutral. Exhale, both knees to the right. Inhale to neutral. And just continue with this exhaling into a rotation. Inhaling into a neutral reset. Moving at the pace of your breath. Maybe one more time in each direction. And when you're complete, bringing the knees back to neutral, accessing your props. So we have them in that half fold position, putting those by your thighs, letting the bottoms of the feet come together and the knees fall out wide. Now, the props here are optional, but if getting into this shape, this externally rotated hip position feels like you're ideally set up here. And remember, you can tuck these as close as is possible to give yourself more support. If more support feels ideal, use the support. If you feel like you want to get a little bit more openness, you want to experience a little bit more of that hypermobility, you can remove those blankets and you can always tuck those back in. So just listen to your body, listen to what you would be benefiting from the most, and allow that to be the experience that you receive here. So through the work of the staff, particularly hard work from the maintenance staff, the leaks are stopped, addressed, and essentially invisible by the time the first guests arrive. And these big, fancy motorcades are bringing these guests and they're dropping them off in this pouring rain on this Royals. Has staff out with umbrellas to help usher them in. And motorcade after motorcade after motorcade arrives. And dinner begins. And the first course comes out. It's a French-inspired escargot. Everything's been kind of infused with traditional Indian spices. And so it's this French-Indian fusion. It's plated beautifully. Everything comes out in perfect order. So there's enough staff that everyone gets their plate like synchronized in synchronicity. No one's waiting. And everyone's really having a great time and eating. And this royal, she sees that there's a duchess who isn't eating. And she looks down at the plate and she sees that it's escargot. And she knows that this duchess is vegetarian. And she had talked with the kitchen staff about this. And she gets up and she excuses herself and she apologizes and she heads into the kitchen and she laces into this tirade to the kitchen staff manager. And he's wide-eyed and listening to her yell. And when she's done, he says, well, I came in and asked you earlier if you wanted us to do something special for vegetarians, and you said no and shuffled me out of the room. And she flies off the rails at this, saying, she can't be expected to provide all of these answers when she's trying to keep the house roof from falling in. And the staff responds, quickly puts something together, brings it out, apologizes, swaps the plate. Not a big deal. Everybody's having a great time. Now we're going to add a little dynamic leg movement. So this is going to be full range of motion. So if you're using your blankets as support, keep them where they are. If you're not using them, you can decide whether you want to use them or not. But we're going to go full inhale, knees together. Full exhale into the openness that we've been sitting in for the last minute or so. So just dynamic inhales, knees together, thighs together, exhale into external hip rotation. Again, the movement here may be catchy, it may be hitchy, it may be pulsy. Totally reasonable to expect that to be the case. If it's not happening for you, wonderful hip abductor endurance. If it is happening, a unique experience to feel that fatigue in these little tiny muscles that are very protective in our ability to maintain our range of motion in our external rotation of the hips. Just playing with what is available here. We're going to move dynamically for another 60 seconds. Really think about the release at the end of the exhales in this last minute. Just completely into your external rotation, completely into the ease of your external rotation, completely relaxed into your external rotation. Next time the knees come back to neutral, let's pause there. Just allow for a little recollection of the hip joints. And then we're going to do one last bit of dynamic movement. We're going to do it with our eyes closed. So allow your eyes to close. And then as both knees fall to the left, let the eyeballs also fall to the left. So the positioning of the head is straight up towards the ceiling or sky, but the eyes are reaching over towards that left corner of both eyes. And then we'll inhale back to neutral. The eyes will do the same thing. And then we'll exhale over to the right. Eyes go over to the right. And we're just going to alternate back and forth here. Last little bit of dynamic movement with some dynamic eye movement. And let's go one more time to each direction, or one more time until you feel balanced. We'll bring ourselves back to neutral. When you're ready, let the eyes open. We're going to connect with our ball and one of our blankets. And we can keep the blanket as is, or you can go to a shelf fold and then a hot dog fold. So you create that little ball placement, little ball taco, and go underneath. The ball goes underneath the cervical spine so that you get this really nice final adjustment. Legs can be extended here. Knees can be bent. Bottoms of the feet could be together. Knees could fall out wide. I can't imagine that you need more of that, but if you do, it's available. And then we're just going to be at ease here. You may even start to think about the stillness of Shavasana. It's an offering here that you could stay in this shape through Shavasana. Comes back from the kitchen and she sits down and the plates are swapped out and everybody's having this good time. And then out of the corner of her eye, she sees a drip start to come down from the ceiling just behind the table. No one else notices it, but she gets up, she excuses herself again, and she finds the head of the maintenance staff and she starts yelling at him to fix this problem immediately. She can't believe of all the places to have a leak in the dining hall. She turns around to head back in. And as she does, she slips in a puddle. Now make your choice here. Maybe you want to remove the ball from underneath your neck. Maybe you're already in a shape where you fully appreciate the physicality of your body. You're ready for some stillness. You're ready for your version of Shavasana. If you want to remove that ball, do. If you need any movement, offer it. And then we're going to get into a shape where we can be fully still, fully at ease. So she slips in this puddle and she just flies into a rage. She runs back to the maintenance crew and she starts berating them. And the kitchen staff overhears this and they come out and they're hearing her scream at the top of her lungs. They come out of the kitchen to see what's going on. And they watch her and she starts yelling at the kitchen staff. Her face turning red. Your body getting more and more at ease here. she's done yelling at the kitchen staff for poking their heads out of the kitchen to see what's going on, she turns back to the maintenance staff. And her anger and fury is just rising and rising and rising. Eventually, the head of the maintenance staff says, Your Highness, we're doing the best we can. And that sends her off the rails. She starts flowing into this vanity-laced tirade about how they're incompetent, incapable. And before she finishes, the maintenance staff all look at one another. They take off their staff uniforms, lay them on the ground, and leave. Start to bring some movement to your fingers and your toes. And then she turns to the kitchen staff and she says, What are you doing here? Go get back to work. And they look at her and they look at one another and they take off their kitchen uniforms, lay them on the ground, and leave. Movement up into your wrists, your ankles, your elbows and your knees, shoulders and your hips, your neck, your head, your jaw, eyes, tongue. Eventually, the whole body moves, and we'll utilize that movement to transition our way back into a seat. In our seated space, spine gets tall, breath gets fluid, eyes close. And so now she's sitting in this hallway that has water leaking from the ceiling. And she knows she has to go back into this dining hall full of all of these fancy and important people and explain to them that dinner is going to be canceled in the middle of it. And with your next inhale, we'll bring our hands together at heart center. Over the course of the next 7 days, can you remind yourself that when a crisis arises in your life, is the worst possible time to bring a crisis into your you and see how that impacts your experience? Thank you so much for being a part of this morning's practice and for being you. Namaste. Happy Sunday, guys. Appreciate the heck out of you being here. Have a beautiful rest of your day. Take care of those hips. We'll be back tomorrow night. We're going to do a little bit more movement. We'll probably have a little bit of a hip focus. Love the heck out of you. If I see you tomorrow, have a beautiful day. If I see you next week, have a beautiful week. Bye.